Good evening everyone, and welcome to the Elite Encounters video update for 27th of July 2015. Welcome to the stream, and I hope you've all been well over the last week. Right, I won't waste any time, I'll get straight on with it today. So today, progress report as normal. I will be looking at the miniatures in the start display, probably as part of the progress report. We'll take another quick look at the to-do list, look at the feedback and questions, and we'll mention the charity stream again. Yeah, so that's basically it. There's not a lot to it today, I'm afraid. This week, writing again, not much focus on the writing side of things. I'm primarily waiting some feedback to come back from the, some play testers, and then I shall be getting back into the writing side of things again. I've been concentrating more on the artwork again, as I did last week, trying to get a bead on sort of how these miniatures are going to look, because it's really the sort of miniature side of things that's kind of feeding the development of the gaming side of miniatures rules. So can't kind of do one without the other, so I'm kind of hoping to get a bit further down that road. There's been some progress. I mean, following last week's stream there was some work done on there. I'll go into that in a second. And I've been having a couple of conversations with some people about Playfair. I think that's pretty much my most generous chap. Oh, speak of the devil, and he appears. Mr. Bifford, who pops up in the chat on this channel now and again. He's been doing some testing with his group over the last couple of days, and he's been giving me some information. So, the miniatures and start displays again has been the sort of main focus of the work this week. The things wrestling with on this so far have been trying to display the vehicle stats in a way that is easy to read, easy to change if something needs to be changed, and sort of easily understandable, as well as allowing enough room for flexibility. Now that after the conversation with Mr. Junks at the bottom there, the image on the screen is sort of the work in progress idea that I'm working on at the moment. The big issue that I've been dealing with is how big these counters should be, because these are pretty much the representation of the online world in a game. The ships will be presented here, so I want them to look half decent. I want them to look as good as I can get them to look, but still be small enough on a table to not take up too much space, or not require too much space for somebody to have a quick game. What keeps going through my head on this aspect is that it is supposed to be like a close combat, close quarters combat type thing. Not to pinch a phrase from Frontier's CQC update that's coming up soon, but it is primarily intended to be sort of very short range, sort of dogfighting type things, rather than being lengthy missile barrages or things like that. So in theory that gives a bit of flexibility for how big the hexes or pieces should really be. Another thing I discussed during last week's stream, I'm not sure if it was the Elite Encounters update or if it was the other one now, the sort of gaming stream, is whether this actually be editable. So should people be allowed to, not be allowed to as such, but be able to write stats on those counters if they change their if they change the ship, if they upgrade the ship in any way, like put new weapons on it and so on. The other thing to look at on there is whether default counters should be provided with the values already written on, and then obviously if anybody creates custom loadouts or custom weapons positions on the ships, and then they could have blank counters for doing that with. So it's all these different things that are going round and round and round at the minute, and trying to pick one that's going to be a good compromise between one side and the other side. It's proven to be quite a challenge. One option I have been sort of looking at is obviously whether to have tracking on the counter as well. Now, the image on the screen there is one of the ideas I've been playing with. It's the most developed one at the moment, because it's one I've sort of tweaked the most, because it seems to have the most potential. And as it says on the screen there, it was Mr. Junks during last week's stream that provided much of the sort of back and forward dialogue, that came up with this kind of idea, which is having all the stats around the edges. It was an idea I played with in an earlier iteration of the miniatures rules, but they were actually sort of on the main piece as well, rather than being sort of cast off to one side as they are at the moment. What that size represents in my head at the moment is the hex in the middle with the ship on it is a 1 inch across hex, which is just standard 25mm hex size, and around that it goes out to 1.5 inches in diameter, and that extra ½ inch, or centimetre and a bit, centimetre and a quarter, it provides enough room for you to write in enough information that you need to play the game. The red areas are where the to hit value for each, not to hit value, but the damage value for each weapon on that facing will be written there, and that's how much damage could be dealt out by something facing that side. Other options I was mucking about with were having a separate area for stats on the bottom of the counter, so that rather than having just a single hex like that, the game sheets with all the counters on would come with one hex with all this information on, and just being a ship. Sorry, it wouldn't have all this information on it, it would be literally a 1 inch hex with the picture of the ship on, and then you would have another hex attached to the back edge, if you like. If I can move my mouse, if you guys can see my mouse here, on this edge, you would then have another hex added onto that, which would then be writable, and you could write the stats on the bottom of the counter. That involves having to flip the counter over, so again, not an ideal solution. Bifford's just asking, are you going to 3D? One of the options that I was thinking about wasn't so much 3D, because it's very difficult to build a 3D ship at this kind of scale, but it was 2.5D, which was the hex base with the stem coming up, joining onto a side view of the ship with a notch cut out, or a slot cut out, and into that slot you would then insert a top view, so it would be like a T-shape. So you'd have a plan view, and then you'd have the side view, and you get a kind of 3.5D look for that. That was one option. The good thing about that way of doing it is that frees up the entire base then for different things. Yeah, Bifford, I do know. I know a few guys as well, including myself, who create 3D things like this. I do 2.5D, like the cruciform type shapes, that kind of thing. Okay, that's maybe something we can talk about at some point later on then. That's quite interesting. I can do them. I have a machine that will cut them out as long as they're a certain size, and print it onto sort of glossy cardboard or something like that you can stick together as a sort of card model style template. So I can do that kind of thing. I would prefer to be able to do it on double side printed plasticard, but I don't have the facility to do that, which is a bit of a shame, because it would be an awesome idea. So as I say, yes, the stats and how to represent them on the counters and different things are kind of in my head. There was another idea that came into my head ages and ages ago. I was doing these as a card, like a business card like shape or size, which has the hex as part of the card with the ship picture on it and an identifier, so you'd have like a circle with a 1 on it or something like that, and the rest of the card would contain the stats for the ship. The card would then be used as the record keeping aspect of the counter, and then the ship itself would be represented on the playing surface as just the ship counter. So there you go. 3D printer, yeah. 3D. Don't even start with 3D printing. Yeah, I keep asking the question and I keep getting nothing back. So I'm still waiting to hear back from licensing about the options for doing 3D printed ships for Elite, and offering them as part of the game or as something that can be used as a supplement to the game. And I have various different dialogues with different people about that at the moment, which, if you were listening to the Monday Night Gaming stream, not last week but week before, I had a bit of a rant about the whole situation, and whether, and well, I'm not going to go into it now because it's not part of this update, but I might touch on it again if people join me for the main thing. Mr. Junks was the one who sparked off the whole creative aspect of getting these hexes sorted out last week, and that idea that's on the screen there is primarily his concept, with a bit of development and coming on. The to-do list then, what does it look like? We're still pretty much at the same place we were before, because we're still looking at vehicle combat and then getting it finished. The one thing I would say is that the character generation, avatar creation and general system is now back on the drawing board, but not for major rewrites. We're only looking at tweaking at this point. The feedback that's come back from various different people has said that there could be some small adjustments made to try and address a few small things. So it's not a major thing, just a very quick rewrite, a very quick update, and a bit of rejigging and balancing, essentially, which is essentially what the playtesting phase is about, is getting things balanced properly and making it accessible, and that's going on well. So I'll come to that in a second, though, as part of the feedback and questions part of things. And speak of the devil, there it is. So some feedbacks came back from the Wiltshire White Horse group, as they have titled themselves, as represented to me by Mr. Sam Byford, an awesome chap who's been a big help, him and his group, over the last few weeks trying to get these playtesting done. Some traits could be combined. Essentially, there are a few traits apparently in the list that are overly similar to each other, or at least not different enough to warrant being separated out. The examples that I've had back from that would be sympathy and empathy, for example. Whereas they are quite different in your actual definitions, one being the ability to understand someone else's emotions and their point of view, and the other one, sympathy, being able to offer sympathetic ear or be able to understand things for them. They are similar to an extent, but there are important differences. But the differences aren't important enough to separate the stats out into separate stats, and they could, in theory, be put together into one, which is fair enough. So the things I'm looking at, so that's one of the things I'm looking at tying down, and hopefully combine a few things. It makes a shorter list, and it's a shame to lose sort of the numerical count of them all. But if it makes something that's a more concise system, it gives more of a freedom in the roles as well, because you only have then one stat to control two slightly different things, and it makes sense to keep them that way. So, careers before games start and how experience is gained. Now, a lot of focus in the rewrite, the major rewrite that I've done in the first half of this year, has been trying to tie down the career paths and the way that characters are created and what they become. And the focus has been moved from creating just a completely random type of character class or completely random type of character experience, and having somebody that could essentially start as any game. I've tried to focus it slightly more on trying to be more elite and have it so that you can have any career that you want before the start of the game, but at the start of the game the intent, it's not necessarily the tight thing to do, but the intent would be that in general, people would be then starting a career as a space trader or a space pilot, or whatever it is. They're essentially starting the elite game. And one thing that has come from all those modifications is that there's a lot of positivity about how everything's been sort of tied together. But experience gain, and especially experience gain through careers before the start of the actual game, is very loose and needs to be tightened up slightly. And probably limited in some aspect, because at the minute, as has been mentioned to me, the option is there then to just carry on gaining your terms of service in a particular career for term upon term upon term. So each term of service is 3 years. You could do 3, 6, 9, 18, 30, 60 years worth of experience, which would mean that you'd be maxing stuff out pretty quickly for certain things. So you have that option. So one of the options has been to try and limit either how experience is gained or how much experience can be gained through that mechanic, or limit the amount of time that people can spend in a career before the start of the game. So I'm looking into options for both or either, and just trying to see if there's a way that doesn't restrict the character generation process, but does tie it down so that the segments and experience gain do mean something. Likewise, more granularity in the career options. That's something obviously that I may have missed out. Now I'm going to have to review that, because at the moment, as I sit here, I can't remember exactly how that part of the book goes. It's difficult to remember 190,000 words in one go. But there are apparently the playtesters have felt that there isn't enough options for new starters. Like, you're told that you can be a pilot, you can told that you can be a bounty hunter, you're told that you can be this, you can told that. But as far as things like pilots are concerned, you're not told if there's anything underneath a pilot, like whether you could start as a pilot or as a mechanic or as a not what to do with sort of bridge options. Like if you're on a ship that has a multiple crew, can you start it as a pilot, or can you start it as a navigator or a weapons officer or another bridge position rather than just pilot? So that may be something I need to look into and try and expand out a little bit. So again, checking that. I've already mentioned the limits in terms of service. So speed of progression, experience segments as well needs to be tied down or perhaps made more flexible. So need to obviously look at that. And the flow of the text narrative could be improved still. Again, I spent a lot of time during the last rewrite trying to improve that flow slightly, and I obviously haven't done enough. So again, this is something that would generally get pulled out in the editing phase. It's not something that necessarily I should be sorting out at this point, but it does bear another read through at some point, and just to make sure that I'm happy with it. The feedback I got from the volunteer GMs at LaveCon was fairly positive as far as the narrative flow was concerned. They seem to be able to keep track of the character generation side of things and the system side of things, which is the main text narrative that's in the bit they got. So I shall take another look at that before passing it over to editing at that point. So again, thanks to the Wiltshire Whitehorse group for their feedback. Very, very much appreciated. Positive and negative. I need the negative feedback or else things don't get any better. So yeah, thanks again to them for that. A few emails came in for a change this week, and of them a couple of sort of stood out as interesting things that may not be clear. Well, one of them is this, which is the status on the background information in the book, which hasn't been mentioned for a while. And as it stands at the moment, as I've sort of replied directly to Richard, the background information is fairly much underlined. It's fairly cut down. Not cut down. It's fairly solid at the moment. There's not a lot else I can really do on that until it goes to Frontier for approval. So if there's anything missing from anything in there that they don't like, then they'll tell me to get rid of it. If there's anything in there that they think is missing, they'll tell me to stick it in. So essentially, I can't see any more changes being made to that bit at all up until the editing stage comes in. To one side of the background information, because obviously that's the whole history of the universe. I say in inverted commas timeline, because there is no such thing as a direct timeline going into this book. It's going to be sort of very prosaically laid out. You'll be given a narrative more than anything else, and some highlighted things that happen in there. But the faction information may be expanded and trying to take into account some of the power play stuff that's been happening and has become game canon that may need to get stuck in there. I'm not sure how much depth I'm going to go into on that. I may just drop some names here and there, but it may come out to be a little bit more. But as I say, the background information, that whole first 180 pages of the book, as it stands at the moment, the way it's currently formatted, it could be less, it could be more when I get proper formatting into it, is pretty much set in stone. I'm not changing any of that if I can help it. I had an email come in from Eva Lindinger, which was very, very kind, giving me a little bit of advice. I'm not entirely sure who he is, because he didn't actually note who he may be online, so I'm not entirely sure at this point. But it kind of reiterated something that I have actually already contemplated, which is the token plus card options. The reason I didn't do this in the first place was essentially I didn't want to be separating out the stats, so that there was something else you have to keep track of as well as the character information sheet. Not the character information sheet, the vehicle record file. But as far as quick play is concerned, this may be something that is worth doing. And again, the Evans email has kind of popped it into my head that it is maybe something worth looking into again, and see if it can be done. And as I say, I quite like to take the thing off to one side, the concept off to one side, and say you've got your token, you've got your counter, your hex counter, with the ship picture on it and a reference to which card it goes with, so you can tie them together. And on the card you have got areas of white space on there that you can then track damage or shots or heat or whatever needs to be done on there, using either some kind of markers or just one of these dry white pens and a cloth or something like that. So again, it's something to look look into, and hopefully we'll see where it goes. That's about it for the update. Not, as I say, not a lot of movement on many aspects of it. The design part of it is always the bit that seems to take longest, because you sit looking at graphics and trying to work out what works and what doesn't. So it does kind of draw things to a hold, whereas writing seems to be comparatively fairly quick. So the 24-hour charity stream, I'm going to punch it again, because again, as I said, I'm going to punch it every week from now on. So you have to sit and listen to it. It'll be 12 to 13th September, midday to midday. I'll be raising awareness of Marie Curie, playing Elite Dangerous, working on the RPG, and guest stars and giveaways. Now, I've had a few things coming about that, which I'm quite excited about. We've had some giveaway options generously donated by various people in the Elite community, who I thank for their time, including copies of all the Elite books, ebooks, tickets for Fantasticon, believe it or not, and hopefully some stuff coming in from Frontier, which I don't have any information on as of yet, but I'll find out near the time and pass on. And anything else you guys can suggest would be awesome. And that'll be on my Twitch channel, which you're watching now, twitch.tv/Selzen, and you can see the Daftworks UK website will tell you more. I have actually created some specific pages for the 24-hour charity stream and for the Great Dave Shave. So pop by there, have a look, click on the very visible things on the screen, that will take you to the pages that have that information on. Okay, next update will be Monday 3rd of August. Start the regular stream as normal, and if you have any questions, comments or feedback, then stick them to me by 6 PM next Monday, and I'll pop them in. So without further ado, that is me for this update today. Thanks for watching. Those of you who are in chat and wanting to be less confused than you were last week, I will be closing this stream and then reopening it again in a couple of minutes for the gaming stream, the Monday night play, Monday night stream, whatever you want to call it. So if you're wanting to watch that, don't go away. I'll be right back. And for those of you watching the Elite Encounters update, thank you for watching. Take care and see you next week.